Hi all, if you're new to this channel, my name is Nina. I make videos related to my job as a teacher, my faith as a Christian, lifestyle, and a lot of response videos. And I was really on the fence about whether or not to respond to this topic being the death of Ruth George. But someone commented on a recent video of mine, and I just felt like it was a topic that we should talk about because something that's hard to process. And I just wanted to create another space for other people to process and talk about what happened. And I'm going to be linking down a lot of different articles down below and citing the sources that I get various things I'm going to be sharing with you from. But I'm going to first start off by something from the New York Times that basically explains that a college student who was Ruth George was killed by a man whose catcalls were tried to ignored, prosecutors say. So Ruth's attacker grew angry. She was just trying to go home, a few college students say. She was walking to her car. And she was leaving her car. She was going to her car around 1 a.m. alone in a parking garage, and she was strangled. And I don't want to say this incorrectly. So the defendant, this is according to CNN.com, the defendant came up behind the victim, grabbed her on her neck from behind, and put her into a chokehold. While his arms were still strapped around the victim's neck, the defendant dragged the victim from the ground and opened her backseat car door. Thurman was released from prison in December after serving time for armed robbery, campus police said. He was sentenced to 6 years but only served 2 and was on parole. And I think some other facts that are important to share about this before I start to talk is from Heavy.com. It says that, and I don't know how reliable this source is, but I'm just letting you know where I'm getting my information from. It has some facts about him. He's a 26-year-old Chicago man. He was not affiliated with the university, which makes it even more terrifying to think that he was just waiting outside there. But to shed light on what exactly happened, police say Donald Thurman was seen on surveillance video following Ruth George into the parking garage as she entered alone on early Saturday morning. So that means she went in early Saturday morning, probably broad daylight, and went in to study for hours. And this man saw her as she entered. And that just adds a whole nother layer of scariness, because I was talking to a friend of mine and we were thinking why is this hitting us so much more than other news? Not to say other news wouldn't hit us, but this is harder to kind of move on from, and I sound so insensitive saying this, but this is such hard news to hear, and to carry it and to think about it is really hard. So we're thinking why is this harder to stop thinking about? And in part it's because, we're not the type of people who would be out in a club at 1 a.m., but we maybe would be in the library, And I think Ruth George is someone who is something somewhat more relatable to us, because we would be doing that. And this man obviously targeted her because he went in from early morning. And the next thing it says, he was convicted of armed robbery in 2018 and sentenced 6 years, but released up to 2 years, which we know already. He gave a full confession to sexual assault and murder. Her sister Esther wrote on Facebook she was a light of her family, best of us all. She was baptized a few months ago, and hearing her testimony of why she wanted to follow Christ brought great joy to me and my family. She was wise beyond years and is gone too soon. The statement is from the Chicago Tribune, and it says, in the statement released Tuesday morning, George's mother, who asked not to be named, offered a brief but aching remembrance of her daughter. Ruth lived out her deep faith in Jesus by loving and serving others, living a legacy of Christ-centered kindness and sacrifice. She was the beloved baby of our family. We grieve with hope. We hold no hatred towards the perpetrator, but our hope is no other girl would be harmed in this way, and for mother to never experience this type of heartache. And I'm just blown away by that mother's forgiveness and love, because I'm just thinking, if I were a mother, or even how my mother would react, I don't think we would have that kind of love and forgiveness for somebody like that. And I know I feel as though I'm being very hypocritical right now, because I recently posted a video about John Christ and how he deserves our forgiveness as well. But I realize I am a hypocrite. I am a human being and I'm flawed, and I am definitely a hypocrite because I know what the Bible says about sin, and I know that all sin is equal, but it is much easier for me to forgive the sin of someone like John Christ. It's much easier for me to forgive the sin of somebody like John Christ versus somebody like this man. because who I don't even want to name, you know, like why I don't want, like I already gave his name a spotlight, but he doesn't need to be named, you know. It's much harder for me to forgive someone like him. And I guess as a Christian, I am so moved by this mother's forgiveness, and I hope one day I can be as forgiving and loving. And I think I should be careful as I say that, because I remember hearing, like, if you want patience, the way that God gives you patience is hard situation. And so I don't know if I necessarily want to go into a situation where I need to be, I need to forgive someone more for something. But first, addressing the headlines, the way that they write it as though it's her fault, and people comment on that, and it is absolutely not her fault. This man targeted her, and even if, you know, he didn't target her, it's crazy that, like, who's to say that if he didn't ignore her, he wouldn't have done something? Like, he was obviously not a stable person. So it's just completely unfair, and I'm not going to try to find the silver lining in it. And I've talked with some friends about this, and we'll try to say, like, oh, well, maybe, you know, like, she's going to go to heaven regardless, and maybe other people will see the light of God through the situation. And I think I'm just not there. I don't know if I'm just being, like, whatever, but I'm just not there. And I just think that her death was such injustice, and this is just one of the ways in which I am at times confused about the way that the world works and why God allows certain things to happen. But I know that it is above me, and I hate to say this, but sometimes when I hear news like this, I just need to mourn it and then move forward, because this type of stuff has the potential to, like, completely weigh you down and completely hold you down. And I think that that's kind of the beauty of her mother's forgiveness, because her mother took away whatever hold that bitterness and hatred and anger could have held over her by giving the love and forgiveness of Jesus Christ that ultimately none of us deserve ever. On a more practical note, after seeing this, and I know, like, I was again talking to a friend about this, and I realized, you know, self-defense classes, that wouldn't have worked for her because she was, like, a very small frame. He was a bigger guy, and there are times where, you know, like, it just won't work. But at the very least, me and my friend are gonna sign up for self-defense classes, because we do live in the city, and it made me more aware of, like, hey, I want to be, like, prepared if something like that happens. So practical level self-defense classes, just like things where if someone puts you in a hold like that, how to react. Because unfortunately, reality is that somebody like Ruth George, who I could see myself in, like, went through something like that after studying in the library all night or studying at her school all night. Granted, I still don't have control, and ultimately we never have control over anything. So the suggestions I'm offering, they are only offering some sort of advice, but we do not have control over the situations at the end of the day. But taking self-defense classes, another thing is, if you're going home late, or if you're going home in an area that is secluded, then trying to go with somebody rather than going alone. And she went in early morning, he targeted her again. So, like, obviously it was not her fault. I think he would have tried to find her regardless anywhere. And as a woman, there have been times where, like, on the train randomly, like, a guy, like, I remember this guy came up to me and he started talking to me, and initially, like, I didn't want to anger him. So I just said, like he's like, oh, hey, I know you. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I know you too, like, whatever. And then he just kept talking, and, like, I got kind of scared, so I started to ignore him. And he got so angry that he got out at the stop, and then as he stood outside, he pounded the subway train doors. And in that moment, like, the next time I went out to the subway, I was afraid, because he actually he knew what stop I got on. He knew, like, where I was, you know. So in instances like that, like, they're just things that beyond our control, and luckily, like, nothing happened, it was fine. But when I acknowledge that as I'm offering these suggestions, like, I can't control things, but we can try to be prepared. So knowing self-defense, going in pairs home from different events, or if you're going somewhere secluded, or if you're in an unsafe place. I heard it's actually illegal to carry pepper spray, but I don't know. I'm just like, but those are just two practical ways I can think of to make sure you're safe. But ultimately, I think we are all mourning the loss of Ruth George, and I'm just really happy that, like, she had a walk with God, and we know where her eternity rests, regardless of how her time ended here on earth. But yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna put this up because this was, yeah, I don't know, but I just wanted to create some kind of response to this. And I'm interested to hear down below, as a man or a woman, was this law shocking to you? How did you respond to this? How are you processing it? How are you working through it? It is always difficult to hear about the loss of somebody. It is always difficult to hear about the ways in which our world is really broken, and ultimately this brokenness comes because of sin. And this sin creates a divide between us and God, and the beauty of the gospel is that Jesus comes for even men like Donald Thurman, which I believe is his name, even though like I don't want to give him a name and whatever, but there is even forgiveness for men like him to find Jesus and to find forgiveness in the love of Christ. But that doesn't mean that I still don't want to forgive him, but yeah. Okay, I'm gonna end it off here.